Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome aboard for those who are watching the replay. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at.
J. Bernard Kine Sr.
And this is Progressively Yours, Health and Wellness Podcast. We're very excited, as usual, about our show this evening. We have some phenomenal guests who are also good friends, so it's nice to reunite with them. But before we get to that, I'm going to let Bernard do his spiritual opening so that we can get calm, centered, and balanced.
Thank you, Imani. As it is our ritual and for the show, I'd like to invite you who are joining us, if you wish to participate, to just for a moment, wherever you are, if you're seated, to get relaxed, close your eyes, not completely, but just leave a little shadow where you can see what is referred to in yoga as your drishti. And I'd like for you just to close your eyes partially. Take in 3 breaths, in and out through your nose, slowly, fully, and let your body begin to relax so that your heart center can receive what our wonderful guests, Spencer and Erica, will share with us tonight. The 10th verse from the Living Wisdom of the Tao. I suspend my belief in opposites by seeing myself in all. Carrying body and soul and embracing the one. Can you avoid separation? Can you let your body become as supple as a newborn child, I should say? In the opening and shutting of heaven's gate, can you play the feminine part? Can you love your people and govern your domain without self-importance? Giving birth and nourishing, having, yet not possessing, working, yet not taking credit, leading without controlling or dominating. One who heeds this power brings the Tao to this very earth. This is the primal virtue. As we welcome the ancestors to be with us, we take these words of wisdom and apply them to our hearts, day to day, moment to moment, breath to breath. Ashe.
Ashe.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was such a perfect reading for our topic tonight, which is the divine relationship, balancing the masculine and the feminine. And I noticed one of the first things in that reading was, I suspend my belief in opposites. And, I think that's going to be a good segue for our discussion this evening.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the discussion, we're going to share some of our information about health and wellness supplements that are really powerful. There's one in particular, we've got a short video about Impact MVP, which really helps to It helps the body in so many ways. Let's just show the video and you'll see why I like it. I don't like taking a lot of things. So this is one thing. It's actually in a liquid form and it's black. It's got a lot of minerals in it and it does not change the taste of whatever you put it in. So I like it for that reason too, because it has no taste. But anyway, let's show that. I'll ask our producers, Janet, if you'd show that video, please.
Welcome to the 21st century, the century of the internet, social networks, nanotechnology, and the conquest of space. Health is crucial for a person to develop to their full potential and live happily. Every day, science advances on healing of multiple diseases, and in the field of cellular nutrition, which is the basis of a healthy body, contamination in the air, food, and water, as well as oxidative stress, which accelerates premature aging, is a challenge which is being combated with great effectiveness. One of these great advances is the molecular hydrogen contained in Impact MVP. The molecular hydrogen in Impact MVP is combined with the pharmaceutical-grade, all-in-one proprietary formula designed to literally benefit every organ and cell in the body for optimum health. Impact MVP solves the great challenge of taking many products to benefit every organ of the body. Impact MVP dissolves in a bottle of water, can be taken by children, young people, adults, the elderly, and pets. Impact MVP aids in the detoxification of the liver, kidneys, and gallbladder. It naturally stimulates the production of insulin and increases the resistance to it in the cell. It's antiviral and boosts the immune system to its highest levels, combats chronic fatigue and muscle inflammation, increases resistance to exercise, helps repair muscle injuries, improves sexual performance, contains powerful antioxidants, reduces oxidative stress, promotes a deeper state of rest, promotes cardiovascular and neurological health, helps with mental focus and concentration, and stimulates the metabolism that helps us control our weight. Thousands of studies support the benefits of molecular hydrogen. The science behind every ingredient that makes Impact MVP is solid and proven, but the best test will be the results of the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who will enjoy every day the benefits of Impact MVP. Give your body what it needs, and soon you will see your life improved and you will be happier. Try Impact MVP and start experiencing the advancement of science in your health.
All right. Thank you so much, Janet, for that. You all can see why I really like Impact MVP. It does so many good things for the body. I take it every morning, but I'm especially conscious of taking it when I go to hot yoga, which is pretty much every other morning now. I went this morning, and it definitely helps to increase my energy and helps me to get through that whole process. So there's a link on the screen if you'd like to order some. I highly recommend it. It's impactmvp.com/the + and then lotus flower. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to just remind people from last week, we were talking about a company, Sequoia Lending, that provides funding for real estate purchases as well as for businesses. And they they do a lot of creative financing. So they say when the banks say no, they say yes. So I didn't have the link last week. So this is the link that people can go to. It's my Dr. Imani.seqlending.com. That's Imani.seqlending.com. And you can always reach out to me if you have additional questions, but that will take you to a site where you can actually get a free consultation about their services, and there's a simple application they have to fill out. Okay, so that's that, and we're going to get into the heart of our conversation this evening. I would like to, I could do an introduction of Dr. Spencer Murray and his wife, Erica Parks Murray, for probably about a half an hour or so. So I'm going to keep it real brief just so that we have time to have a discussion. But Spencer used to work with me and others as consultants at the DeKalb County sheriff's office. And he was by far one of my favorite people, one of my favorite instructors there, working with people, changing lives every day. Whenever we had guests come in, I always had, in fact, the sheriff would always ask me, because I convinced him that Spencer's classes were by far some of the best. He would say, "Is Spencer available? I've got some people visiting. Can you think we can go to his class?" I'm like, "I'm sure we can go to his class." And he always welcomed us and didn't act put off because we were interrupting him. He was quite pleased that we appreciated so much what he's doing. So he's one of our amazing guests this evening. Spencer is the co-founder and executive director of No Harm. He is a speaker, writer, minister, and conflict transformation practitioner who specializes in working with men and boys as it relates to unhealthy ideas of masculinity and how these ideas contribute to violence towards self, women, and the community. Spencer is convinced that a man who has true knowledge of self will do no harm towards others. And Erica Parks Murray is the co-founder and board chair of No Harm. In whatever space she finds herself in, she brings with her a passion for disrupting the status quo to build spaces where all of humanity is seen, celebrated, and thriving. As a certified coach, she believes we all have a story to tell. That is so true. Erica recognizes that expanding the definition of violence to include psychological, emotional, and financial abuse opens a space of healing and lays the groundwork for real change. Join us as we welcome both Spencer, and Erica to the show.
Thank you. Spencer's time.
Spencer, welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Spencer's fine. Please call me Spence.
Yes, okay. What
Yeah.
I always have, and
I know, yeah.
term of endearment. It's so nice to reconnect with both of you after several years. You know,
I know.
So fast, and a lot has happened during that time. But
Yeah.
it's just nice to see that you all are continuing to grow and make changes and work with the community and have an impact. It's so needed, because so many people are sitting around complaining about everything that's wrong, and
I know.
don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Don't have time for that. We really have to move forward.
Yeah.
So why don't you open up with the background questions?
Yeah.
I always like that. That helps. That kind of helps everyone to warm up.
Well, I'm delighted to meet both of you and honored to recognize your historical relationship and friendship. And I'm now indeed grateful to be a part of that union. And I look forward to getting to know both of you through Imani as we beyond this platform as the days move ahead, because indeed we will find ways to continue to work together in areas in which there's a passion for both of you, as I was reading some of the background material.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into the No Harm and program that you have founded and changing lives, tell for our listening audience, and this is a question for both of you, it's more not a question, but piggybacks on what Erica said in terms of everyone has a story to tell. So there's a foundational, both of you, before you came to No Harm. So could you both tell us briefly about who you are from your early life? And I always like to say, first thing that comes to mind between the ages of birth and age 12, kind of free associate whatever comes up that you can share, because it's in that range where the foundation really is established. So when the story comes up, we'll connect with how you share with us later. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, so thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
And for the clarification, because the first thing I thought of when you said between birth and 12 was, I was thinking, oh, okay, I was in Philly. I'm born in Philly. And then I thought Eagles.
Right.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Mhm.
For me, when I think about those ages, I think about the foundation that my parents set for me. Um, both of my parents were in the home, and I didn't appreciate until I got older. And when I say older, probably in my early 30s, appreciating I'm I'm the only child, appreciating the love and the support that my mother and my father poured into me, and appreciate it again, not until I was in my 30s, come to recognize the importance of, and you've seen this too, that whenever I walked into a room, my dad just kind of lit up. He has all my life. And because I was used to that, I couldn't see it from myself. It took someone else to see. Actually, you pointed it out to me.
Wow.
Um, and so I didn't see that in them. And so my foundation has been rooted in having that experience all of my life. And I think that then impacted how I saw men and how I saw men
Mm.
treating me. Now, it didn't mean by any means that daddy was perfect, because he certainly wasn't. Um, he also didn't talk a lot. He didn't express a lot. I got that from my mom. And so when it comes to my expectations of a man, it was to be loved, but I thought that men just they simply don't really express themselves.
Mm.
But I knew
Mm.
I wanted to be in relationship with someone that could, and someone that we could have communication and relationship and talk about the things that were uncomfortable. Um, so that's what comes up to me for me when I think about those early childhood years,
Mhm.
um, that have really deposited in me and make me and kind of form the way that I see myself today and the way that I see you today.
So if I can just add two themes come up for me as I'm listening to you, Erica. One was I heard the theme of love
Mhm,
modeled and that you internalized and took in,
mhm,
and I also heard uh, the emotional, the longing and opening and receiving of emotional availability and from mom,
mhm,
and as you took in from your father, it also opened up for you to look for partner mate, as you have found perhaps in Spencer, who could be emotionally present, that can have conversation with you not only intellectually here, but intellectually from here. Is that right?
That is spot on. That's exactly right. I was looking for that. The other thing I would add too is my dad was often the life of the party. And so it was a lot of fun. And because of that, I also was looking for someone that was fun, that was my friend, that we could hang out with, that I could hang out with and want him to hang out with my friends and my family. And that was also really important to me, someone who was my friend.
Thank
First
you.
and foremost.
Very good. Spencer?
Yeah, mine is almost opposite.
Wow.
It's just interesting how things come together. So when I think about 0 through 12, and I say opposite, well, I'll say the same, that 0 through 12, um, uh, my mom and my dad were in the household and were present in my life at that time. Dad didn't pass until I was 17. But when I think about where I'm at now and what we do, and then I think about 0 through 12, I think about um, I think about a young boy who um, was pretty comfortable expressing emotions as a boy. You know what I mean? Just would cry and things like that, and express some emotion. And in those years 0 through 12, I also can say that I began to learn these ways of holding back some emotion. I began to learn that as well, because in my household, there wasn't a lot of expression, outward expression of love. You know what I mean? There was, the roof is over your head, the house is here, the food is on the table, but there was not a lot of outward expression, I would say. And so I think during that time with my dad, I learned to um, kind of navigate who I was, because not only was I growing up in the household, I was also starting to be um, affected by my peers, going to school, the boys in the neighborhood, learning how to be a boy, learning what being a boy meant. And in some of those years, at a certain point in those years, I learned that that it was not acceptable to express some emotions that were considered at that time, were considered weak, or were considered not manly, or things like that. And so, 0 through 12 is an interesting time, because it's almost like the innocence of a child who then learns how to start navigating, because you're learning all these ways, or all these unhealthy ways of being a boy and growing up and being a teenager. So I think by the time I became 12, those lessons probably became more cemented, that that you can't express all of your emotion, particularly when it comes to intimate relationships, particularly when it comes to girlfriends, particularly when it comes to love, that you have to hold some of that back, and you can't show all of who you are and be all of who you are for the sake of being a man. So I think that was my experience of where that started in 0 through 12, which leads definitely into what the work I do now as well. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I was thinking as you were describing, how you were full of emotion when you were younger, and then you learned to kind of to shelve that.
Yeah.
I've looked at my son's baby pictures, and in all of his younger pictures, he was just smiling and smiling and smiling. And then you get to like 12 years old, it's like,
Yes.
it's like the hard.
Yes.
It's like, what happened to the smile?
Yes.
It's like a whole different persona.
Yes.
And I was like, what did we do different to create that? But I guess, society and just being a Black boy, some of that happened. But
Yeah.
So
and being cool, trying
Oh,
to be cool and all that. That was part of that, a big part of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing that foundation. And we know that there's much more, but yet we're time limited. And but that gives us a grounding for Spencer and Erica in a beautiful way. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you did say that that's kind of like a segue into your work. I know that you did your dissertation on toxic masculinity. So it's something you've been thinking about for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your work and how you came to really wanting to explore relationships and help people with relationships.
Right. I think for me, y'all, it was continuing to ask the question of continuing to ask questions, first of all, and live the questions. And after a while, seeing so many patterns, certain patterns, I began to look at how I'm showing up in relationships. You know what I mean? Instead of pointing the finger and blaming others, and how I'm showing up. And so it was almost like, as I kept asking those questions, I was led to the next stage of my journey. And I think, Monty, when I met you, I had just started at New York Theological Seminary, and I was doing that dissertation on the patriarchy and religion and violence, and how they both can contribute or be the roots of violence toward women, or we can start learning our perceptions from there. But I really wanted to look at, when you look at relationships, where do men and women get their perceptions of how they should be, and who a woman should be, and how women are, and how you move in relationship. And then one thing led to another. I began to read some literature that I was not accustomed to reading. I read, and particularly Black feminist literature. And it began to open my eyes. It's like I began to see through a whole different lens. I was only seeing through the lens of my own lens and my own pain, my own experience. And then I think I always had a spiritual nudging to know who I am, right? And that's some of the work I did at the jail, helping men to know who they are, whether that was, didn't have to necessarily be in a church or in a religious setting, but who are you, and kind of transforming who you are. And so that led right to that, right? And so as I began to see and look back and do some of the healing, look back on relationships and look at patterns, I could really see how many of the ideas of who I thought I was supposed to be was externally imposed upon me. That I wasn't inherently bad, you know what I mean? I wasn't in it. I was taught and indoctrinated and socialized into being a certain way. And that saying that says, I grew into the mask. I was wearing the mask, and then I grew into it and became who I was. It became who I was, and that's who I thought I was. You know what I mean? And, fast forward, it led me into doing what I'm doing. And that led into the dissertation, and the rest of is history. Continuing to do this work.
Okay. And so, Erica, when you and Spence met, which phase was he in of the self-discovery? And I mean, that's personal, but
it's a really good question, because he's always been a seeker. I mean, so when he and I met, that's where we met, and just appreciating that doing work on yourself, and that in order to be in a healthy relationship, you come whole. You don't come, this is my better half,
right?
Whole. And so he's always, at least from our conversations and what I've seen and what I've talked to other people, he's always been a seeker. What has changed is that when we first got together, I'd say the first couple of years or so, I know that I've always been big on looking at the messages that are coming our way through the television or marketing, and videos and music and all these things, and how women are seen as, a lot of times we're seen as objects and not fully human. And so I would point things out, like, do you see that? Do you see that? Now, why do they have to do that? Like, I'm just, da, 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 da. And he got to a point where he could resonate with what I was saying, and that he could stop and really hear me and understand what I was saying. And so I started to see a change in not just feeling like, he hears me, he understands, but he sees me, and he sees women differently. And he sees the kind of the roadmap to what led to that. And then when he started really got his dissertation and started doing some real boots on the ground work, up the sleeves work on himself, I started to see that our conversations changed, and that he was so much more vulnerable and open, and willing to be expressive, and willing to shed a tear at the drop of a dime, with what he's feeling, more expressive with his emotions, not just with us, but just emotions, period. Just emotions, not trying to
dumb them down.
Yeah. And so I really start I've started to see that more and more and more. And now, and now he's an advocate, and now we're co-founders of No Harm. Who knew?
Right, right. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's a nice transition into telling us about No Harm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the reading that you did, Bernard, at the beginning was
Right.
amazing. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Because I think the work is, or I know, not just I think that it's founded in that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one of our values that was reflected in that reading was that there is no separation.
No
Right.
separation.
There is no separation, and that there are forces, and there are forces even within us that will want to separate us from ourselves and separate us from each other, and so I think once that separation, there's a philosopher I love, Krishnamurti, and he says something about as soon as you begin to separate, it can set the stage for violence, because as soon as you separate, that whether you separate yourself by gender, whether you separate yourself by race, whether you separate yourself by religion, separate your beliefs or whatever, that separation can begin to set the stage for harm, because it sets up this one against the other. Just what that reading said, the opposites, right? It sets that up. And I think and I'll say this last point, particularly with the masculine and feminine, that for many men, and I'll use myself again, that as a young boy, from the ages of that 0 to 12, I was taught to accentuate, to pump up everything that's masculine and suppress everything that we see as feminine, nurturing, gentle, cry, expression, cry, to suppress all of that. And so I always believed that that causes a separation within self. That you're separated within. You have suppressed half of your humanity,
Right.
for the sake of manning up and being a man. But and what happened was that it caused me a lot of pain that I did not know how to give voice to. And so I think that part, and I've seen this in a lot of men I work with, I certainly have seen it in myself, the part that you suppress, because young boys, and I talked about a young boy going on the playground, once he starts socializing with his peers and other boys and gets into sports and all those things, boys get rewarded for the manning up. They get pats on the back for manning up, and they get punished for showing anything that is outside of that norm of being a man. So they get punished for crying. They get punished for doing anything that looks weak. And so that makes one want to continue to put this mask on of masculinity and wear that mask. And so it almost becomes a self-hatred. It's like you're pushing part of yourself down. And I think it can manifest as violence toward first yourself, and towards women and girls and anybody who doesn't that norm. You know what I mean?
And then and hence, because of those reasons, we started No Harm, which actually stands for the National Organization for Healing and Redefining Manhood.
Yeah.
National organization. Say it again, Erica.
Yep, the National Organization for Healing and Redefining Manhood.
You kept, especially you continued to use the word mask. Yes. And I'm smiling because it reminds me of one of my favorite songs by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I didn't know that why I was so in love with this song, because it was not one that you would party and dance to. You may recall The World is a Masquerade. And Maurice, the way he sings that with so much passion, that we have to remove the mask so that we can get to our inner self. And Howard Thurman placed great emphasis
One
on
of his
that,
guys too, I can
and
tell.
in his message of growing in love, which is the theme that you all have introduced up to this point, growing in love of myself.
That's right.
And one of the things he talks about in that piece is that that I have to work through all of these images.
That's right.
These images,
Mhm.
and it is a particularly difficult and perilous route to get to know oneself.
Yeah.
And so separation that I was connecting with, as you were saying, was this first separation is with myself. And so how do I keep this congruency within me as I'm developing relationship with me and therefore with the other?
Yes.
So thank you for the world is a masquerade, and we are having to find ways to transform it. Part of my work, I have both men and women group, and I have about 7 groups. And so in both the men and the women group, the men have been working diligently to learn their emotional self. So that feminine energy to which you speak has to be learned, because we have been so hardwired, and we have all these neurotransmitters that are locked into what you were describing pressed down. And on our show last week, I was reading this piece that Joseph Campbell wrote in The Hero of a Thousand Faces. And he says that the hero has to match her import. You see, in other words, we have to learn as men and teach men, and I'm sure that you've been doing, and you've both been doing, how that it's okay to embrace that feminine energy.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And in order for that to happen, one of the readers, I can't think of her name, I read several years ago, said that for men have to be open to developing a psychic wound.
Yeah. Yeah.
In order to be penetrated, so that they can find ways to engage in self-introspection.
Yes.
You said a lot there.
That is it. And I have to tell you this. Bernard, because I can feel Erica's energy when you said that. Earth, Wind, and Fire is one of my favorite groups. I read Howard Thurman every morning.
Yes. Oh wow!
And then I have a reader that he has. He has this like a reader every morning. And Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. I think he one of the quotes I say all the time, I don't know if you know this, is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek.
Yeah. Wow.
The cave that you fear to enter. And so I mean, I just feel that in what you're saying, in that it is one of those caves that many of us men who've been programmed and hardwired are afraid to enter that cave.
Yeah.
Afraid to enter that cave and afraid to enter that space, because as I said, many of us have been so rewarded, and gotten rewards by other men, because of that. You know what I mean? And so that is the foundation of our work, and healing. And this is why, Amani, when I left the jail, I think this is when I started really started looking at not just men's healing, men's transformation. I was always into that, but particularly how those notions and ideas had harmed or were harming women. You know what I mean? We could talk about harming ourselves, but now I began to look at too, on this part of the journey, how they harmed women. I was just beginning to look at that, and so that part was really eye-opening for me, because as nice as I was, as good a guy I thought I was, I didn't realize the harm you know, the emotional harm that I was creating. And Erica and I both, we've been married for 14 years now, but this is not my first. It's not her first marriage either. You know what I mean? And so we came together. We met, I think,
The right time.
at the right time. At the
Wow.
right time when we were doing that work, and we still
Yeah.
grow together. But we
Mhm.
were doing it at the right time.
You know, you said something that I thought about. You said that a lot of men get pats on the back when they mimic what Western society says is a man, and what a man should do and what a man should
Mhm.
not do. A man should not
Mhm.
express that feminine part of himself. That they for many that doesn't feel like even an option to do. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, why? Why is that the case? And then I imagine part of it is because they are also rewarded by women
By women. I was thinking that,
Mhm.
Erica.
who say, this is what I expect of you because you are a man.
Mm.
I expect you to not be fully human because it gives me security when I can rely on you to just express that masculine part of yourselves.
Right. To be
So,
strong, to be, to be the wall, but not to be the soft part.
not
Right.
to be the
That's right.
soft.
So, Erica, that's an excellent point. That I often have conversation in the women group because they're always wanting to know why are the black men the way that they are.
Mhm.
In an old text entitled Black Rage,
Mhm.
to the point that you're making, both these psychiatrists wrote this in 1969. And on the chapter of acquiring manhood, they eloquently write how the society, as you indicated, has provided a means for which to socialize the black mother on how to raise the black son. You know, we've heard of the Willie Lynch letters, but it was primarily to suppress his they say masculinity, but really the feminine in it as well. So it's kind of both and.
Mhm.
And so when mothers unconsciously uh, uh, castrate their sons emotionally,
Mhm.
they're unable to fully develop and create this balance that is needed out of fear, out of the need if the significant other is not around, uh, they then work to get that need from that male offspring. And
Mhm.
then, as they point out in the text, then what happens is then the black boy grows up is angry with black women in general.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
So and so he's compared with, and then society is not just him; it's the society of how the history of racism that's been created by not us,
The oppressors.
the oppressors,
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
have helped to put this way of
Mhm.
unconsciously of thinking into
Mhm.
motion.
That's right.
So it has to be unlearned, and it's tremendously hard work.
So
Yes.
the other part of this is that I was working with a naturopathic doctor for a couple years while I was in Virginia Beach. And Dr. Vincent, Michael Vincent, wonderful person. And he does a study of epigenetics, which is what's carried over in our DNA. Like, so in addition to the socialization, we have things, he says, in our long bones
Mhm.
that have nothing to do with us, but to carry over from, it could be 7 generations back
Yeah.
that we're carrying. So when
Mhm.
we talk about unpacking stuff. It's not just our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's our ancestors' stuff.
That's right. That's
Where
right.
they did relationship.
That's right.
You know, I mean, the whole thing of beating kids, you know, is something that, you know, it came from slavery, but then, you know, Black folks were big into this beating thing to correct behavior or to protect kids from others that might not appreciate that, you know, behavior. If the kids are out on the street doing something, you know, we've heard all the stories for why, you know, Black folks beat their kids. And, you know, it's like, so that's my point. It's generations of hurt, of harm, of not understanding self, not understanding community, not understanding people who look like us, and not loving ourselves.
That's right.
I mean, it really boils down to loving ourselves. We can love people who look like us.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And you know, we still have a lot of work to do. So tell us, and we have a little bit of time to talk about no harm. But this has been such a great build up to understanding the importance of this topic and the fact that that we still have so much work to do. It's
a lot of work to do. Yeah, it's a lot of work to do. And when you say that's what you were just talking about, that it's just layers of trauma, right? Just layers of trauma. I remember quickly you were talking about a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but we're talking about during when the enslaved were emancipated, so to speak, and that the Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to help those who were freed from slavery or whatever, and so the women. When the formal enslavement period was over, women who were in the fields, doing the work as well, wanted to go back and take care of their children, take care of the home. And then what the former enslavers did was say, you know, the production that they were getting was going down because the women weren't in the fields anymore. And so now they thrust upon the men that you need to control your women, so to speak, saying that you need to control your women, and now your production and your pay is going to be based on what she does and having her come back. And so it set up this it set up this, you know what I mean? It set up this tension of I have to control you, and now, you know, our pay, you know, it's just so many layers of this trauma historically. And so I think one of the first things we do, well, and one is not more important than the other, but really set up these healing spaces for men, healing and wellness spaces for men to come in and be vulnerable. And, you know, the no harm hour, we do it for teens. We're going to do it for teens and do it for men, to really share our stories, as you talked about, and talk about that vulnerable and support each other, and move from this idea of competition to cooperation, whatever these Western constructs have been, to move into this idea of oneness. You know, and so with no harm, we are going to have, and we have those spaces, no harm hour, going into schools, talking to young men, violence prevention work in schools, and really tying it into these ideas of power, you know, which you know, and we certainly have this big debate about guns and everything, you know what I mean? This power, what power is, you know what I mean? And turning from this external to internal power, as Bernard was saying. So, and Erica, you know, when you talk about working with and talking to mothers about how you raise your sons, for gender justice or for peace as well, and there's a few other things too, but that's what no harm is about, going into all those spaces, reconstructing those ideas. And sometimes you have to go back and like we did at the cab, uncover, recover, and still that, and uncover, recover, discover. It's the same thing.
I was just, as you were saying that, Spence, we have organically seen an uptick in people schools reaching out because of the violence in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just here, we're in Atlanta, so local to Decatur, there was one particular school that you were working with that just within what, two weeks?
2 months, within about 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You can tell us.
Yeah, 13-year-old, the 13-year-old got gunned down at just coming out of a skating rink. Some weeks later, a 14-year-old at the school committed suicide, and so
same school.
The same school. And so it's moving from, it's really holding spaces, and we don't, and you all know this, in this society, we often don't hold space for grief. Mm-mm. And to be able to process it, we give people 2 days off work, and then you can go to the funeral, and then that report is due next week. You know what I mean? Right. And so, but people are still working with, with grief and trauma that must be addressed. That must be addressed. So creating spaces for that is really important.
That's an excellent point. And creating the space where it is safe to be vulnerable.
That's right.
I like what Thurman says, that you want to create the space of the beloved community, and within the beloved community, one is able to move from no longer having to peek out and under, but rather move into a place where he or she can be completely vulnerable and completely secure.
Right.
And that's the work. Yeah. That's the work that we have to create.
Yeah.
So that when we create the space for people to be able to be vulnerable and secure,
yes,
at the same time we are equipping them to go back out into the community.
That's
and
right.
their families to do likewise.
Right.
Eric, would you agree with that?
I certainly would agree with it. And when we can do that in the community, right, then we don't have to rely solely on a criminal justice system to provide accountability, and I say that because, Amani, you brought up something earlier, and I'll try to say this fast, and I forgot what I was going to say, but I remember now that historically, sometimes in the violence against women movement, the historical narrative sometimes was they were closely aligned with the criminal legal system, which is a whole nother conversation, in the carceral system, and who's mostly who you find Black and brown men in the carceral system and things like that. And so we're talking about going into the community, and the community, the communal care, we become responsible for each other, and that we hold each other accountable, not by force, but by inviting each other into their own humanity, inviting people into their humanity. And then I've never met a man who really doesn't want to find his own self, find himself, if he's invited to do that in a safe space.
Yeah.
Instead of being forced to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to that point, we can't type in the private chat, Janet, but I want for Spencer and Erica, I would like for you, if you can pull up the clip from Master of Light. I like for them to see that, because what Spencer just said connects with that. So Janet, can you pull that up right quick?
It does.
Eagles versus pigeons. Which one would you rather be?
You said I want to be an eagle.
Why?
Because they fly higher than pigeons.
And what does that allow them to do?
See more.
Who are you?
So much of who I am today is my experience growing up in my hometown of Kansas City.
My mother had me at 15.
All I wanted was somebody to love me.
What have I done that's so bad that you can't forgive?
Mama set me up to go to prison instead of her. When the judge sentenced me to 11 years, I said, I'll show you. I think about the system that failed her. I am not what has happened to me.
Your story and your experiences, your being seen, it's no accident.
Well, I kind of always escape through art. If I just took the next step, the world would open up before me. Share this inner light within you. I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become.
Wow.
Powerful.
Powerful.
Yeah. We
I
went
saw,
to. Go
I
ahead,
saw
Eric.
November 6th, so it's out now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's still on HBO Max.
I think I speak for both of us when I say we'll
Yes.
be watching that tonight.
Tonight.
Good. Oh, you will love it. Love
Hey,
it.
halfway through the video, Erica says, "That Bernard right there?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, that's
Guilty as charged. Back
that's powerful. That's it.
That's
And
it.
it's a true story, and you were invited.
Yeah, it was a
to-
documentary. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a documentary.
Man, that's powerful, and that is, and I think when you heal people, when you heal men and women, you heal a community, you heal a world,
That's it.
No, that's powerful, and that's inspiring for the work that we do. That is the work that
Right
we do.
there.
Oh yeah. Master of Light.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
We came in the springtime. That film was featured in the Atlanta Film Festival.
Film festival.
And they were talking about needing to raise funds, and and they were really getting it. And then next thing we knew, we saw it on HBO Max. It's like, huh? Wow. What happened to that? I mean, someone picked it up and just
That's it.
with it, and it's so exciting.
It is.
Because you know what? I think it's always been the time, but I think the world is ready for it.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more on if not a daily basis, definitely on a weekly basis, when I'm hearing from women and men the importance of being fully human. And they don't necessarily use these words as far as honoring both your masculine and your feminine.
Right.
But that's basically what they're saying. And I'm really hoping that the women that are saying that again, we going back to what I was saying earlier, that we recognize that we don't put these harmful ways of not being expressive and not on men, not being expressive, not being vulnerable, not being able to feel, that we look at ourselves and make sure that we're not putting these harmful ways of being in relationship on our men that we're in relationship with, because we are fully human and we need them to be fully human as well.
Absolutely.
We're down to our last minute.
Yes.
And so after you hear the music, don't go away. We'll talk afterwards, but a sentence or two from both of you on what you want to leave with our listening audience of wisdom.
Before you get to that, I just wanted, for some reason, we weren't able to communicate with our listening audience. We're usually texting back and forth.
Okay.
And I just want to acknowledge everyone who made a comment, who appreciated our guests and the topic, that we've discussed. We just want to say thank you to you all and acknowledge you for being there with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, well,
thank you all to y'all. Thank you all for having us.
Yes.
And thank you for inviting us. And it's just
a pleasure. I look forward to continuing this
discussion.
Yes.
Oh yes.
I do too. And I'll just say that we all have a story. We're all on our journeys. it doesn't end. It continues. We're disrupting those neural patterns, those neurotransmitters, and going a different way so that it becomes a practice, and then it just becomes a way of being. And so just encourage everyone to continue to live their story.
Yeah, I gotta continue to live your story and unlearn, unlearn what you have learned, unlearn and uncover, recover, and discover. And that's my thing, and discover a new way of being. And so to be a man and a woman is to be fully human, that we are both masculine and feminine. That's fully. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Peace and blessings.
Thank you.
Stay around for a minute. Okay. All right. Peace and blessings, everyone.
All right.
Stay.